One of the greatest things that any coaster enthusiast can do is take a road trip, hitting a new park every day, or sometimes even 2 or 3 parks a day. I've taken at least one coaster road trip every year since 2016, the biggest one being the 3.5-week cross-country trip in July of 2018. I'm going to base my advice in this video off of a long trip like that. This is the enthusiast guide for taking a coaster road trip. The first thing you'll need to do is figure out where you want to go and who you want to go with. Map out your route and figure out how many days you'll need to do it. The more people you travel with, the better. Even though food, souvenirs, and park tickets will cost you the same regardless, gas and hotels will be cheaper if you travel with more people because your share will be less. Just don't travel with too many people or else the car will get too crowded with everyone's luggage, and naturally the more people you're with, the more it'll slow the group down. So this brings me to your transportation. The cheapest option is to use your own car, but you need to make sure that it's reliable for a long road trip. Also consider the wear and tear you'll put on your car, and if driving a few thousand miles will increase your insurance rates. The alternative is renting a car. It'll definitely cost you several $100s, but you're guaranteed to get a model year within the last couple of years, and you won't be putting the stress on your own car. Just make sure that your personal insurance covers your rental. If it doesn't, buying coverage through the rental company can get expensive. So back to the trip itself. Once you decide where you want to go and how many days it'll take, you can decide what direction you want your loop to go. Usually it doesn't matter much, but if you want to avoid certain parks on certain days, like Cedar Point on a Saturday, it may be worth it to consider reversing your route to hit it on another day. On my 2018 trip, I hit Cedar Point on a Tuesday and Waldameer and Conneaut Lake Park on a Saturday, which worked out great. Usually there's not a lot of room for error in planning a road trip. If there's a park that gets rained out, there's not much you can do about it unless you plan on scheduling multiple days at a certain park. I personally don't do this. I try to maximize the number of parks I go to when I'm on a trip, so I don't do more than one day for any park. But you may want to do this, and if you do it, it definitely decreases your chances of some unforeseen circumstance causing you to miss a park. It's good to have a backup plan just in case. If you have to completely skip a park because of weather, you can see if there's something else in the area that you can visit. On my 2018 trip, we knew the rain was going to cause a huge problem on our weekend in Virginia. The rain caused a traffic jam that caused us to get to Kings Dominion 90 minutes before it closed, so we decided to come back the next day and scrap our plans to go to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. We could have hit Busch Gardens on the day we were supposed to go to Carowinds, and hit Six Flags Over Georgia on the day we were supposed to go to Dollywood, and then scrap the Dollywood day because Lightning Rod was closed. But the day we were supposed to go to Carowinds was going to be more dry than the next day, and I couldn't sacrifice my chance to ride Fury, so we just cut Busch Gardens out completely. But this is the kind of thing that you can consider on a long road trip. On my April 2019 trip across the southeast, we were going to come back to Dollywood, but I knew if Lightning Rod looked like it was going to be closed again, we would have used that day to go to Wild Adventures in Valdosta instead. Having a plan but being flexible and having a backup plan is a really good idea. Flexibility leads me to my next point, and this is something I still screw up sometimes, and that's booking hotels. There is no real reason or advantage to booking hotels in advance, and booking too far in advance can lock you into plans that you may want to change later. Unless there's a special event going on and you're worried that there might be no hotel space, I wouldn't book anything until a couple hours before you plan on arriving at the hotel. I personally use Hotels.com because I can get some good prices through the site, and after 10 bookings, I can get a free room, which is really nice. You can usually find inexpensive hotels between $50 and $75 a night. I generally look for a chain motel with a halfway decent rating on TripAdvisor, just to make sure that it's not disgusting or in a bad area of town. You don't need anything fancy on a road trip, because if you're doing the trip right, you won't be spending much time there before it's time to move on to the next park. Some parts of the country are more expensive than others, and booking hotels on a weekend is more expensive than on a weekday, but just do the best you can with the hotels. So let's talk about the parks themselves. You need to make sure that the distance between each park is reasonable. Once you get to the Midwestern US through the East Coast, you'll find that most parks are within 4 hours of each other. If it's any more than that, like if you're trying to go the 10 hours from Dollywood to Silver Dollar City, you may need to schedule a travel day or cut one of your days very short. Even with your typical 4-hour drive, it's a good idea to pace yourself at each park. I was used to taking week-long trips and just going all out, staying from open to close, riding the best rides 10 plus times, and hitting all of the flat rides. On this 3.5-week trip, we pretty much rode all of the coasters once, hit the best ones 2 or 3 times, skipped all the cloned flat rides, got some pictures and 360 video, and we moved on to the next park. The last thing we wanted to do was get worn down or get sick when we were on the go every day for 25 days. We tried to get there at opening every day so we could get to as many rides as possible before the lines got long, and we tried to hit the low capacity rides first before they got the worst lines, such as Nighthawk at Carowinds, Firehawk at Kings Island, Wonder Mountain's Guardian at Canada's Wonderland, and Pandemonium at Six Flags St. Louis. With this strategy, we only decided to buy a skip the line system 3 times. Once at Cedar Point, once at Canada's Wonderland, and once at Six Flags Great Adventure. Cedar Point is always a fast lane park for me because even on slow days, the best rides will have big lines. Canada's Wonderland tricked us into getting it. I thought we were going to have problems getting all the credits without it, but then the morning crowds disappeared and it turns out we didn't need it. Great Adventure was a day that we were splitting rides and sharing Sophie, and we got there late, so we just got the Flash Pass to maximize our rides for the few hours that we were there. I guess it was also good that I avoided the high traffic parks on weekends. Our Saturdays were spent at Six Flags St. Louis, Waldameer/Conneaut Lake Park, and Wonderland in Amarillo. We also got to King's Dominion on a Saturday in a rainstorm. So crowds didn't really end up being a problem, but avoiding the huge parks on weekends was a major plus, and we saved a bunch of money by not needing to buy many Flash Passes. It's also a great idea to hit as many chain parks as you can: Six Flags, Cedar Fair, and those in the SeaWorld chain, which includes Busch Gardens. The Six Flags Pass that gets you into every park is less than $90, and for Cedar Fair and SeaWorld, that pass should run you a little less than $200. You can also get the dining pass for these parks, which I have for Six Flags regardless, and when I go on a road trip like in 2018 where I went to 9 Cedar Fair parks, or 2020 where I will visit 8 or 9, I get the Cedar Fair dining pass also. Hitting up these major chain parks saves you a ton of money when you have the season pass, though you will have plenty of parks that aren't affiliated with the chain, like Hershey Park, Kennywood, Waldameer, and others where you have to pay either a full day's admission or have to buy ride tickets if you don't plan to stay too long. I would suggest trying to find discount tickets online. I was able to buy Hershey Park tickets at the kids' price because I bought them early in the year. My company also has us set up with a discount ticketing site, which I know a lot of employers will do for their employees. And of course, you should always check if Groupon has anything good. I mentioned the dining pass a second ago, but as for keeping food costs down, a lot of hotels offer complimentary breakfast, and you should target those as long as it's close to the park and the price is reasonable. I never bought food at any park that I didn't have a dining pass for. I would usually put some granola bars in my pocket, which was good enough since we rarely stayed late at any park, and we'd get food outside the park afterward. This may not work for everyone, but it works for me because I really don't want to eat when I'm riding coasters. As for getting food outside the park, my 2018 trip was during a time when McDonald's had great deals on their app, which really isn't the case anymore, but we were getting a pretty good amount of food for $2 or less. I originally did not like the idea of eating nothing but fast food for the better part of a month, and I actually brought a cooler full of food from home, including salads, sandwiches, burritos, but in the middle of the summer, it was next to impossible to keep everything at 40 degrees or below to keep it safe to eat, so after the first week of the trip, I was pretty much on the fast food train. My last piece of advice is to take as many pictures as possible, and get as much video as possible, and even write down a detailed record of your experience at each park every night. All of that footage will be super valuable to you in the future to look back on how a park used to look like, or if you want to start your own YouTube channel or Instagram page, you'll have lots of content. You won't regret getting a ton of photos and videos at each park, but you will regret not doing so. I personally regret not getting more pictures on my pre-2018 trips, and even though I got tons of pictures on my 2018 cross-country trip, I regret not getting more video footage, which is something that I've started focusing more on starting on my trips in 2019. I know what everyone is probably thinking. What does a trip like this cost? All things considered, you can do a trip like I did for about $3,000. I ended up paying about $3,200, but that was because I also bought a lot of souvenirs and I paid for 3 Flash Passes, which you don't have to do. And if we had a third or fourth person with us, it would have been even cheaper because gas and hotels make such a big chunk of your expenses, and those can be split even more if you have more people traveling with you. I love coaster road trips, my first one coming in 2002 across Ohio and Indiana, and then up the East Coast and back across Pennsylvania to Ohio in 2008, a Midwest trip in 2016, the Southwest and Texas in 2017, the cross-country trip in 2018, the Southeast in spring 2019, and then the Pacific Northwest in the summer of 2019. And in 2020, we'll be flying into Kansas City and taking a 2-week trip across the northern and northeast US and Canada, which I will go into more detail with in a future video once we hammer out more of the details. A lot of my subscribers and followers have asked me about the logistics of a road trip, and I figured I would put all of the information I could think of into a video like this. But let me know if there are any questions you have that I didn't address here, or leave any other comments below, and I'll see you guys all next time.